Hello, I'm Scott Allen, and you're probably not. Even though I can't see you, I remember that you're a beautiful group of people, and I'm thankful to be here with you on this miraculous planet. This is going to be a great day for education, and I do love you all. I asked a student a few years ago, I got kind of upset, so I said, "What do you think the purpose of public education is anyway?" And the student immediately replied, "It's a break for the parents, a paycheck for the teachers, and a prison for the students." And I said, "That's not what I was looking for, but I'm going to write it down anyway because it's pretty clever." In fact, the purpose of public education is what Mr. Davidson often says. We're trying to get you ready for all transitions in life. So if you can read and write proficiently and do basic math and have a general idea of how science and history work, you're going to be a good employee. Also, you're probably going to be a happier person because it's going to help you with your perspective about life. And what perspective is a noun that means a mental view or outlook or the relationship of aspects of a subject to each other and the whole. So, for example, if we could go ask Paul, our narrator, for All Quiet on the Western Front, would you prefer to stay where you are in World War I, or would you prefer to go to 2020 and face the pandemic currently rampant in the world? And Paul would probably immediately say, I would prefer to go to 2020 because, as our leaders tell us here in Kentucky, we will eventually get through this, and most people are going to be all right. In World War I, Paul had no idea what was going to happen until the war was over. And as you know, if you read it, and my wife clarified to me, Paul didn't even make it through the war. World War II was the same thing. Things were so desperate that the United States drafted people who were up to 28 years old. I met two people who were 28 years old when they were drafted to go to World War II. I said, "How old were you, Papa, when you joined World War II?" And he said, "I didn't join. They drafted me when I was 28. I asked a famous Kentucky author named James Still the same thing and got the same answer. So as desperate as those situations were, the good guys won in both instances, and because of that, we live in the United States of America. We're blessed there, and we're blessed to live in Kentucky, and we're even more blessed to live in the isolated, sparsely populated foothills of Breathitt County. We'll now go on to some of the historical information about All Quiet on the Western Front. Scholars believe the primary cause of World War I was the assassination of Austria-Hungary's Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie in Bosnia in 1914. Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, which is now Turkey, and Bulgaria joined Germany. This alliance was called the Central Powers. Germany invaded Belgium. The German invasion of Belgium caused Great Britain to enter World War I. Russia, France, and Great Britain became known as the Allies. Since the United States traded with both the Allies and the Central Powers, President Woodrow Wilson tried to maintain U.S. neutrality. In May 1915, the British cruise ship Lusitania, which was carrying American passengers, was sunk by a U-boat. President Wilson's strong protest to Germany resulted in a temporary halt to U-boat attacks on passenger vessels and neutral merchant ships, and the United States stayed out of the war. U.S. neutrality did not last, however. Sabotage orchestrated by the German ambassador in America and the resumption of U-boat activity forced President Wilson to act. I'm going to do a take two on that one. Sabotage orchestrated by the German ambassador in America and the resumption of U-boat activity forced President Wilson to act. On April 6, 1917, the United States entered World War I with Wilson declaring, "The world must be made safe for democracy." World War I was infamous for trench warfare and no man's land. And what trench warfare was, the Germans would dig a ditch or a trench and get in there for protections and across some land. The French would dig a ditch or a trench, and they would get in there and fire at each other and bombardment each other from these positions. And if anybody got brave enough to come out of the trench and attack the other trench, they were in what was called no man's land and would very often be wounded or killed. Here is some information from the actual novel. At the beginning of the novel, in chapter 1, the men come back and all get extra rations. They're excited about this, even though the reason they get the extra rations is nearly half of them were killed at the front line. Paul visits his friend Kimmerich in the hospital, and Paul and his friends know Kimmerich's leg has been amputated. Kimmerich, however, does not know this. The corporal who abused the young men during their training was Himmelstos. The men wanted Kimmerich's boots because they knew he no longer needed them. Kimmerich, however, wanted to hold on to the boots because he didn't know his leg was gone. This is irony. The schoolmaster who encouraged the young men to join the army was Cantarac. Before the war, Paul would write poetry and plays in his room in the evenings. The epithet the schoolmaster calls the young men is the Iron Youth, and epithets are again just another name for a character or a thing. Batman is the Dark Knight. Superman is the Man of Steel. The corporal who abused the young men during training was, we just went over that one, you should know it. Looking back on his training, Paul thought, and this is a direct quote from the book, had we gone into the trenches without this period of training, most of us would have certainly gone mad. Here's another quote from the book. Our early life is cut off from the moment we came here, and that without our lifting a hand. This quote pertains to one of the novel's themes, that the young men had no life other than killing. Paul is with Kimmerich when Kimmerich dies. The sound that foreshadows that someone is going to die is a gurgling sound. We're at 7 minutes and 36 seconds. I think my preferred status with YouTube gives me up to 10 minutes. So I'll remind you, you are a beautiful group of people. I'm thankful to be here with you. And even though this little lesson might be over for you, I want you to know this experience goes on in my heart. And I want you to remember there's nothing worse in the universe than the lack of humanity. So go make this world a better place. I give you the gift of these 4 words. I believe in you, and I love you.